Welcome to the Service MVP podcast. And my name is Joe Crisara, and we have with us a very special guest. His name is Brian McDermott from ProStar Plumbing up there in Calgary, Alberta. Hey, Brian, how you doing today?
Doing well, Joe. How you doing?
Good. Well, Brian, thanks for doing this podcast with us. Today, we're just going to have you kind of riff on some of the most important things you think that are important for contractors to know, or just service professionals, if you're a service tech or salesperson, or if you own a business. Some random thoughts from Brian that he has learned in the last 6 months or so. And if you don't mind, let's go ahead and just start with number one. What's the first thing you think that is you'd like contractors to know that you've learned over the last year past experience with this? And you could tell a little bit about your experience too, so people can understand that as well. Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. So I would say probably the top and most important thing is self-development, from learning how to, where you've begun from for where you're going. What I mean by that is when you start out as a contractor, whether you're just a worker by yourself starting a new company, or you've been with a previous company, it's where's the avenues that you can actually go in the business as a service. Mm-hmm. And where that ties into with our consumers is how are you developing yourself to then provide the best service to those clients? So my journey here in Calgary, I mean, I started like most of us that are in the trade. My father was in the plumbing trade. So he started back up in the 80s, and it was new construction. So he left Ontario. He was born in Detroit, Michigan, left Ontario where his family resided, and then moved out here for the oil boom. So he wanted to come out to Alberta where all that opportunity was. Mm-hmm. He started off in the trades in the early 80s, and it was new construction. So new construction where he was at, and then he kind of started developing and went forward to commercial, and then eventually ended up in the service business where he had a one-man truck and doing his own thing there. How I got into the trade from that was I wanted nothing to do with that. I remember him coming home. He's grumpy as hell all the time. And, he's always like, I don't know what I want to do. Make sure whatever you do, you go to school and you get a good education. You don't want to be part of the trade. So, he pushed me so far away from it where I was like, well, yeah, I don't want to be looking at me. He gets up every morning, he's angry, and he's coming home at night. I'm not saying he was angry, but he was just like, you got to figure out something else to do. And then what happened was naturally, I got a job working for a radio station in Calgary. I was like a marketing guy for them. And then from there, I'm like, oh, there's no place here for me. So I started bartending in Calgary. And then when I was bartending, I met a guy during the Calgary Stampede. He was the president of a big company out here. And he's like, have you ever thought about being an electrician? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, if you want a job, you can start Monday. So Monday, I started my journey in commercial electrical. I did that for 5 years, got my ticket. And right away, I was like, this is not for me. I'm not someone who can wake up at 6 o'clock and be home at 3:15 and not talk to anyone and just climb ladders and drill inserts and holes all day and just backbreaking work. So I left that right away. And then I got a job with a service company here in Calgary, Arby's. And they kind of started me on my service journey. And I was like, you guys telling me that you're going to train us how to go into houses and just have conversations with clients and just let them know what they're, they can have, and they can have some upgrades in here. And then, they're going to pick those choices and we do the work. And they're like, that's exactly what we're telling you. So I started my journey with them and in the retrofit business, swapping out furnaces. So from there, naturally, I was just like, hey, I freaking love this. There's like, I get to go and just have conversations and talk to people all day. I can talk forever. Naturally, I went down that route, and then eventually worked with another great service company here in Calgary. And then after my journey with them, I just decided, screw it, I'm just going to start my own thing. So I approached my old man. I was like, what if I work with you, but we start a different, process on this? I'm going to run my own company. He says, do what you want to do. Let's start the journey going. And then from there, ProStar was built. So,
wow.
I guess to your main question is, when you're starting out, the big thing is self-development. Figuring out what is the avenue and where you got to go. And so I guess that leads us into the next thing of, I had no clue what I was doing. So I'm like, hey, Dad, can you tell me how to run a company? He's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So he's like, I don't have any help for you. So I joined a best practice. And through that best practice, I met some really awesome people. Me and you were talking earlier. Ted Fox is one of them. I met a guy, Ted Fox, out of Vernon, BC, and I just gravitated towards him immediately because he had this company down there and he's growing. And he's a guy that's about the community and about helping others in this area. And so naturally, I just kind of got his phone number and I'd pick his brain all the time. And then there was another guy that lived in Vancouver, Canada, on Victoria Island. His name was Brody Funk, and he owned a company called Super Plumber. So between those two guys, I had this like mass amount of knowledge being passed down to me, where it was like, you're going to want to hire a CSR to answer your phones. And I'm thinking like, how do I do this? And they're just like, I'm just going to tell you this right now. Just do it. And naturally, I just started just doing everything they told me to. And then we started growing this little company that was doing 300,000 to now we're just shy of 4 million. So it comes down to just doing it and self-development, making sure that you're surrounding yourselves by other people who are way smarter than you, that have already been down the path and have kind of laid a foundation. But you got to make sure that you're doing the hard work to make sure this stuff's getting done.
That is so true. That is amazing. Well, it's the day-to-day struggle to keep your nose above the waterline. But Brian, you've done better than that. You found your way to profitability finally. What are some of the keys to being a profitable company? Not just doing it, but actually doing it to where you're on the plus side there, right? Because you've had a lot of great experiences, but making them turn into reality is a different subject. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that are important to create profit to make sure that that's going to happen.
Well, the most important thing is developing the staff and technicians that you have around you. So naturally, a lot of the technicians that I first hired, they all came from commercial. So they didn't understand how to go inside of a house and diagnose a customer. Their whole thing was, hey, I have a kitchen sink leak. And they're like, okay, I fixed that kitchen sink leak. Yeah, it was the trap adapter. We installed it for $189. She's happy. And then what we were finding is that they'd call back 3 days later and say, we have a leak on our hot water tank. Did your guy do something in our house and not get this taken care of? And we'd kind of have to educate the customer and be like, no, he didn't look at that. And then so early on in the journey, I realized that if I'm going to build this and it's going to be successful, it's the training of the people that you have around you. You have to literally give everything to these guys and let them understand that, hey guys, when we go into these houses, I understand that you guys are new into the trading this, but we have to diagnose the client and make sure that they have a clear understanding of what our purpose in the house and what our relationship is with them. Because we're not just someone that's just coming out and fix a leak. We got to diagnose the entire system and make sure they don't have no further problems. And if they do, we at least want to make sure that we provide them solutions. So in the future, they can make a choice to have us back and get that work completed. Mm-hmm. So the hardest part at first was getting these guys on board that really weren't service technicians, because we were hiring a lot of guys in Calgary that came from the commercial side. But when I really started taking the time and sit down and in the mornings spend about an hour and a half and training these guys and getting them to understand that, we're service, which is customer based. Everything is revolving around the customer. So slowly but surely, we started hitting these little milestones, and the guys were like, man, it's like little aha moments. And we were basically able to take the sunglasses off and just see clear as day without having these like blinders on. And what we discovered is that we were starting to get really good at providing clients with amazing service. And then the technicians naturally were like, I really love this job and this path we're kind of on. Can you give me more training? And so I kept feeding them more training, and we kept going on this journey. And what we found was that eventually we just started, having this culture here that we started building when it was just me and one other guy, then me and 3 guys. So now we got about 12 technicians, from installers to sales guys to service techs. But what it comes down to is just the ongoing training with these guys. There's never going to be a ceiling. And that's what I like to talk about. And we share with these guys. It's like, what does the next level of this look like? Because if you're not going to be 100%, I don't know what your 150% is going to look like. There is really no ceiling to the limit we can teach and educate these guys. And once we started doing it, we started finding massive growth and massive wins of the day. And it's just, everything started to kind of smooth out. But what we don't want to do is I don't want to have that yellow light come and we're just cruising through yellow lights and then we're getting T-boned. And all of a sudden we're in a position where it's like, hey, we took our foot off the gas because we felt like we're in a good spot and everything got a little bit easy all of a sudden. And not next thing you know, you have a disaster and your techs are like, I don't feel like I'm learning here anymore. So it was the growth of the technicians and making sure that they're constantly getting training. They constantly feel like they have someone they can talk to. They can bring any issue. It's an open door policy and just speak with us to make sure that they're developing.
That's so great. And so training is the thing that you first start out saying. That's the thing you got to make sure that you're I always say it's the number one service that every business gives their employees. And you're saying to me that the more when you give training, that the employees crave more of it, that it's not just like after you finish your first training you do, it's not the end of the road. I guess the challenge is coming up with more content and more things to learn then, right, Brian? Is there ever an end to what people need to learn there, Brian? What would you say?
I'm going to say there's never going to be an end to it, because once they get at one thing, if you're a guy that came in and you started as a service technician and you've reached the ceiling of that service technician part, I need to develop you now into more leadership role and figure out, what's your next position within the company? Do you just want to be a guy that snakes drains all day? And they're going to say no to me, right? Because eventually there will be a time when, father time catches up with all of us and our bodies are going to be starting to break down, and they're not going to want to be under kitchen sinks anymore, or they're not going to be wanting, lifting toilets out. So how do we develop these guys now into more of a sales role where they can go out on tech generated leads or sales calls and be able to learn how to basically just sit down with a client and learn how to make money by speaking and educating a client instead of breaking their back and using tools and wearing down their bodies. So I always game plan, I have a game plan when I come in with these technicians. It's like, look, I understand you're here right now. Where do you want to go? Right. And that's a big thing when I interview the guys and I hire them. I'm like, where do you want to go in this? Like, what is your future here? Are you just a guy that you're coming here because you want to just be a drain cleaner? Or do you realize that one day you can be an install manager with us? You could be a service manager with us. Like, where's the ceiling for you guys? So
I get it.
Yeah, it's allowing them that time to understand that, hey, I'm not just a laborer here. Because I tell the guys, I'm not looking for laborers. We can find laborers. We can't find people who provide world customer service to people.
That's interesting. So you're trying to develop. You're not afraid. Some of the people say, I don't want to train my guys too much because then they'll get so smart they'll just start their own business or something like that. Just like you did. You kind of said, well, I'll get trained myself and I'll start my own business. What do you say to the people who say that training your people can be dangerous if they train them too good? Which kind of tells you, it sounds dysfunctional when I even say it out loud, doesn't it? Like, I don't want to train my guys so they're so good that they wind up leaving me, type of thing. What does that say? What do you say to those people? What's your thoughts on that?
Can't be fearful of that. And when we hire the guys, that's exactly what I tell them. If you guys spend 2 to 4 years with us and you put in the time, you put your head down and you absorb all the training we're giving you, at the end of that 4 years, you should be able to go and start your own business. Because essentially every call you guys go on, you are running your own business. That call is yours. I don't show up at the door to the client's house. The technician does. You're in that truck. So every day you're out there running your own business. So I actually push them towards it and say, guys, look, if you guys want to run your own thing, all that tells us is that at the end of the day, when you get to that pathway, we've done a really good job training you and you feel like you're ready to go out there and take that step. And I'm willing to help you on that journey. But some guys just don't want that path. Some guys are like, you know what? I want to learn and I want to absorb and stay with you guys and grow within our leadership role here and our team here. But some guys, they want to take that pathway, and I'm fully accepting of helping them achieve that pathway. So I don't look at it as like, oh, we're going to train him and they're too good. I'm going to look at it as like, we trained and we provided that guy. We gave him the best pathway he could. And now he's ready to go out, spread his wings and start his own thing.
So ProStar helps other people get to where they're going to go. It doesn't make it sound like you're afraid of that they're going to wind up going into business. It sounds like you're saying success is success and it's infinite. Just because there's one good plumbing company doesn't mean there can't be more. And not that you're trying to do that, but hopefully you can inspire a workplace. How do you inspire a workplace that does retain those people? And so obviously they could leave, but if they leave, it's got to be risky, right? Like, if I go on my own, that's going to be risky. If I just stay here, it'll be better and easier for me. So what can you do to make sure that retaining employees is an important factor to growing? And that's how companies grow, right? They retain those people. They don't join somewhere else. If some people feel like they want to do that, that's fine. But hopefully we get the vast majority, 99% of them to stay here, right? What are some of the keys to retaining people and keeping those winners when they do become successful?
You got to be not afraid to have the tough conversations with them, right? Because the last thing you want to do is have someone that just feels stagnant in your company that's been there and they're just kind of like, every day it's the same thing. So you got to be able to ask them and say like, and really dive deep into it and say like, what do you guys want to accomplish? Like, what are you looking for? What training? Mm-hmm. And I'm an open book for the team on that. We've had technicians leave before and they're like, we want to get more boilers experience. And I say, no problem. If you want to go do that, we're not the company that's going to go out there and do a lot of boiler work. But if you want to go on that pathway, you know what? You go there, it doesn't work out. You have a doorway back in. We know what you're about. We know what you're capable of. You show up every day. You're great to have. You're a positive influence on the team. So we basically just let the guys know, hey, if you want to take that pathway, take the pathway. If it doesn't work out, you can come back. I don't look at it as like we're losing someone and we can't retain them. I look at it as in their mind, they want to learn more. And if it's something we can't provide them, then that's fair. they can go that route. But the guys that we have and we have retained for over 5 years, they're all great technicians. And it's, you truly have to build that culture of, what do you guys want to do? What more do you want from me? What do you need to do? Do you need to go on a course out in Arkansas to learn more about, air conditioners and furnaces? Do you need to go to AeroSeal training? Do you guys want to learn more about installing duct work? So it's basically just allowing them to know that there is no limit to what we can provide you guys, but you guys, I'm going to sit down with you on a monthly basis and say, what more can you give? What more do you want to give? Because if you don't ask them these questions, then they're not going to develop. You're going to have just a stagnant team that's like, yeah, I don't know, Joe. I really like working for ProStar. It's pretty easy here. I just drive all day, 8 hours a day. I put in 4 hours of actual work against 4 hours of driving, and it's not bad, but I don't think he'll ever leave. But I also don't want him doing it. It's like
Interesting. Brian, what about the future? What do you see if you said if a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan? How do you see ProStar up there in Calgary, Alberta? What do you think? Calgary is kind of like an island. It's kind of a bigger city, but it is surrounded by nothing really, other than when you got in the outlying areas. It's not connected to Edmonton's pretty far away, and between Alberta and Edmonton, not very much. And going south, same thing. But tell us a little bit about what do you see, like a 5-year plan for ProStar, and maybe even a 10-year plan. What do you see in the future for this company?
Funny you just asked me that. I was actually with one of my mentors, and I had my meeting with them actually earlier today, and we were mapping the South. And so Calgary's a very unique city because we're very trade heavy. So there's a lot of service companies in Calgary, a lot of demand. And a lot of these guys are kind of giving themselves a ceiling, like, oh, we're here, we're comfortable here. And it's so reverse of what I am. I want to push ourselves kind of to get to that next level. And it's to your point is, in 5 years, I think ProStar can be potentially a $10 to $50 million company. Within 10 years, I can see us being a $20 million company. But how do we achieve this? And we achieve this by the ongoing training. And it's not being, affected by maybe 1 month doesn't go the way you want it to go. And you're like, oh, have we reached our ceiling now? Have we reached that little flow that comes? That's going to come. We know that's going to come. There's not a business, I don't know, that's just like in 5 years just been on a total uproar and didn't have any dips and flows, right? So it's making sure that you're staying aware of who's around you, who the players are in the market, right? But I don't look at the players that are around my market as like, oh, this company's in threat. I'm like, man, we should sit down and talk and figure out how we together can develop a plan to basically give the best customer service, right? Make sure that technicians around us know that, hey, if a training needs to happen, what would it look like if us three teamed up, had a training session together, and just had a conversation with these technicians and made sure that we have a clear future here? But so many guys are afraid to do that, where if you really want to be great and you really want to be successful, you have to be willing to just freaking smash through barriers and really have no limit, right? We'll run 100 miles per hour through a wall to figure out the next thing. And I don't know sometimes if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing. Every now and then I need to be checked and get my focus back where it's like, what are we really doing? But the final goal is to just grow and develop people in the Calgary area and make them realize that, hey, you can have a great career in the trades. Because in Alberta, the trades it's heavy here, but it's so much energy sector here in oil and gas that it was kind of like, oh, you're a trades guy? Oh man, you should come into oil and gas. You can be a receptionist in a year and make $100,000. You can go work in 50,000. But now the flip's coming. Now everyone's getting out of the energy sector. And all my resumes here, guys have been in the energy sector, and they're like, I just want an opportunity, man. I don't care. I'll start at $25 an hour. And those are exactly the people I'm looking for, are the people that want the opportunity. That's what's going to skyrocket you to those 10, 15, $20 million, revenue years. But within that, you have to build the culture, and you got to make sure you give back to the community around you. You can't be so focused on getting to that number and then not realizing that you got to this number because the people in the city gave you the opportunity to serve them.
Right. Well, I tell you one thing, ProStar Plumbing and all the people who work there, and you specifically, Brian, have definitely embodied what we try to teach here, which is called pure motive service, which is having the energy and the enthusiasm to provide the highest quality, reliability, safety, health, and customer service for your customers that are customized, relevant solutions, and to be honest with your clients. Definitely, you embody that more than almost anybody we have had here in the recent past. Tell us what your relationship with Service MVP has meant to the ProStar initiative to grow your company. Tell us about that.
It's actually meant everything to us, Joe. So as you know, I think I've seen you more in the last 4 months than I've seen my own parents. So, when
I am part of the, I think I'm part of the family now, though, Brian. That could be true.
pretty much. When we first heard about you guys and I had my first initial conversation, I knew something was different immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I'm being pitched to join this organization and it's about, hey, here's what we do. It was more like I felt like family immediately and I understood what you guys were doing. And for me, it's very important that we understand and we run the pure mode of values, which is providing quality, reliability, health, and safety, and being honest even when it's not popular. So when I first onboarded with you guys and I approached my team, I said, listen, guys, I'm moving the company in a different direction, which I think is going to be a very, very strong and the correct way to do things. It's not that we weren't doing things correct in the previous model, but in the previous model, I didn't feel like we truly were putting the customer first. From the way we went to the door to the conversations we had to them about solutions we could provide them. So what it was, what got me really in and what made me really truly believe what we were doing, what you guys were doing at Service MVP, when it was different, it's actually caring and providing those clients with custom relevant solutions. How can we make the customer experience in their own home that they've paid a lot of money for the absolute best? And it happened by sitting down and diagnosing our own staff and our culture here and saying, what are we doing when we go out to a service call? How are we running this call? Because before it kind of sense like the technicians would go to the call and they're like, Brian's telling us to go to this house and just make 3 options and we're giving it to the client. If we don't do it, he's tracking us and saying, well, why didn't we provide him that? Like you asked them the question about it. Oh, they just weren't interested in it. And what really clicked with us is when we first started up with Service MVP is when we first started digging in and asking the right questions to the client. They were like an open book and they wanted to know like, hey, did you guys know you could actually have the best air quality in their home? They're like, no one's ever even asked us this before.
Funny. I think everybody just assumes that people don't want it and they don't offer it, right? That's really good, Brian. Well, I'll tell you what, if there are any final thoughts or comments you have for contractors right now, just give them a piece of final advice as we kind of wrap this thing up. I always say a good podcast starts on time and a great one ends on time. We're just about to do that right now. So, Brian, what kind of advice or thoughts would you give to contractors in general to give them encouragement to fight to the next level like you have?
I would say if you're in a spot where you feel stagnant or you feel like you're not doing too well, reach out to someone. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone that's in your market, another market, and just say, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing to win on a daily basis? Because we talk to a lot of contractors now, especially myself. I talk to a lot of people and they reach out to me. Some are doing amazing. Some aren't doing so amazing. But what it comes down to is don't be afraid to share where your struggles are, because where you're going to find your struggles are, until you get through those struggles, you're not going to be able to reach the next level. And with me, I've struggled multiple times in my life, Joe, but I'm never asked for help or asked someone, what are you doing better that I could be doing? What are you providing that I'm missing here? So the big thing is I feel like it's just lean on people in your own market. Make a phone call to the guy that you think is your competitor or you think that doesn't like you and say, hey, man, what are you guys doing? Absolutely just crush it. We're over here and I feel like we're on the same level, you guys. But maybe if we just share some thoughts and ideas, we can both grow and shine on this.
That's great, right? So get help. Don't just isolation is the enemy. That's where all the dark things happen when you isolate yourself, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I've had so many conversations with a guy like Ted Fox all the time, and I'm like, Ted, how do you do this? How did you get to this spot? How did you do this? And he was like an open book for me. And same with Brody Funk from the super plumbers. Like I relied so heavily on these guys when I first started out because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what a business plan was. Mm-hmm. So reaching out to these guys, they took me under their wing and they weren't afraid to do it. They're like, we want to help people like you because we want someone like you.
The same way I feel about it too. So I guess the exact same reason that motivates me every day too, Brian. So Brian, thank you so much for paying it forward to everybody. And definitely I'll be a partner in doing that for sure, for as long as we live, for sure together. ProStar and Service MVP, we can't wait to make sure that a relationship lasts for several decades. Hopefully, we can keep this moving forward. Brian, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
No problem, Joe. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, buddy.